Thank you for joining us for this week's message at Crosswind Church. If you have any questions about this message or about Crosswind Church, please visit us at www.crosswindchurch.net, or you can email us at info@crosswindchurch.net.
Well, good morning. Good morning. My name is Jeremy, and I'm the pastor here. I'm so thankful that you chose to join us for worship this Sunday. I hope everyone survived Thanksgiving. Just a show of hands real quick. How many of you all traveled somewhere for Thanksgiving? Give me a show of hands. All right. How many? Hands down. How many people had individuals travel to you, come see you for Thanksgiving? All right. How many people just napped all day Thursday? Okay. Tryptophan-induced coma. That comes after Thanksgiving. My wife and I got to travel over to Brentwood. My mother and her family live over there in Brentwood, and so we drove over there Wednesday. It's always a neat time going to hang out with them. They are all college football fans just like we are. And so immediately, the conversation kind of turns to college football. My mom and I are Auburn fans, and Jeff, her husband, is a Pitt fan. He graduated from Pitt. Their son is a huge Clemson fan, and so the conversation kind of drifted towards college football pretty quickly. And in that conversation we had on Wednesday, my mom asked me this question, and it's a question that's not uncommon. Many of you all have asked me the same question because I'm an Auburn fan, and you've asked me this question: Hey, is Auburn going to fire their head coach, Gus Malzahn? That was the question that was asked of me on Wednesday. And I thought for a minute, it's the same thing that I told many of you all asked me that same question, the same thing I told my mom. I said, first of all, I don't think it'd be a wise financial decision to fire him. Like, it would just be a terrible financial decision. For those that don't know, it's a huge buyout to his contract, and it would cost, if we fired him December 1st, it would cost $32.1 million just to make him go away. Now, can you imagine if other jobs work that way? Like, if you're a school teacher in the school system here, the administrator comes to you and you're like teaching economics, right? And the school teacher comes to you the administrator comes to you like, listen, you're just not a very good economics teacher, and we're going to have to let you go. But here's the positive news: we're going to give you $32.1 million to not teach economics anymore. I think a lot of you guys would be like, I'll take the money, I'll pretend to be bad just to get that buyout, right? That's why no other job works that way. It just doesn't seem like it'd be a wise financial decision. The other thing that I said to my mother and to many of you all is, if we do fire him, who are you going to hire? It's not like there's, I watched Tennessee go through that process, right? I know that it could turn out pretty ugly pretty fast, right? And then media could get involved, and fans could get involved, and all that kind of stuff. Good night. Like, it's not like there's a bunch of Tier 1 top coaches, that are chomping at the bit to come down to Auburn, Alabama. Like, who are you going to hire to come coach in the SEC? Like, this is so, I just don't know who that you would hire. And then I thought for a minute, and I went, hang on a minute, let's just pause and let's talk about this for just a minute. Because if you remember correctly, those of you that follow college football, 12 months ago, not even, in fact, 51 weeks ago, we were giving our coach, Gus Malzahn, we were giving him a big contract extension, a lot of money. Why? Because he had just beaten number 1 Georgia, number 1 Alabama on back-to-back weeks and was getting ready to go play for the SEC championship game just a year ago, 12 months ago. Like, that is absolutely amazing. And by the way, 5 years ago, he led that team to an SEC championship, and they played for a national championship. Do you realize, I think you probably do, Tennessee fans, do you realize how many college football teams would be so willing to trade? We'll trade our last 5 years for your last 5 years, right? Because although it's been 5 years since we played for a national championship, if you're a Tennessee fan, you know how long it's been since you played for a national championship. And we played last year for an SEC championship, and if you're a Tennessee fan, you know how long it's been since you've just beaten Alabama. Like, it's hard, I get it. You'd be willing to trade. If you're a Kentucky fan, 58 years. I looked it up. That's how long it's been since you've won a national championship in football. Like so many college teams would be willing to trade coaches, trade teams, trade experiences. But so what in the world makes Auburn fans so discontent? What makes them so frustrated with what their college football seasons have ended up in the last few years? You ready for it? This is what it is. It's because just across the state there's another team that's based in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, University of Alabama, and their coach Nick Saban, who, by the way, just seems like they just win all the time now. I mean, but when you start looking at our measly, it's been 5 years since we played the national championship, you realize that about half of the national championships in the last 10 years, they've played for, if not won, and they got another one coming. About 70% of the time, they will win the SEC, not just win the West in the last 10 years. It doesn't look like for SEC fans it's going to get any better. It looks like they're just going to keep on dominating in the foreseeable future. You see, the problem with us becoming discontent with our record for the last 10 years is we look across the state and we compare ourselves to something else. We see what we don't have and we want what we don't have. And the problem with me is, I was thinking about this week and really even became very convicted of this last night. I realize that happens to me all the time. It's not just a college football thing. I look out and I see other folks and I see what they're doing and I see what they got and I see their possessions and it just seems like they've got it all together. And I scroll through on social media and I see everybody's filtered pictures that are in there of their beautiful, perfect families and all that kind of stuff. And I find myself longing for the things that I don't have. I find myself looking for the things that I don't have just exactly as good as anybody else. And so I look at other people's dogs and their dogs behave better than mine. All of their cars seem to work properly, function when they're supposed to function. All of their homes seem so much better put together and more finished than mine as I look at my undone spare treads. I get envious, and what happens when I become discontent is that I become frustrated, I become angry, I begin lashing out. And what becoming discontent does is it just robs me completely of any joy and any thankfulness that I really have. You realize that I'm not alone in that. You realize that marketing folks and media folks and social media folks have made zillions of dollars playing to our discontent, showing us those things that we don't have, that we didn't even know existed 24 hours ago, and now we just can't live without. And so, have you ever been scrolling through Facebook, right? Just checking people's social media feeds, and one of those ads pops up that's related to what you Googled just a minute ago? Yeah, that's on purpose, right? Have you ever been getting those emails from Amazon? I got 2 this morning telling me about all the deals that they're going to have and all the things that I didn't know exist that now I cannot live without. We live in a world, you live in a world, and I live in a world where we are constantly and consistently bombarded with images and ideas of things that we don't have. And if we're not careful, that will lead us to a case of discontentment with what we do have. Now here's where, as Americans, we kind of push back to that. Because as Americans, sometimes we go, listen, discontentment is not bad, right? I mean, discontentment can, in fact, cause me to want to work harder. Discontent can, in fact, cause me to have a goal that I work for and strive for. It can get me off of the couch to go get ready to run a 5K. It can get me out of my bed so I can go to work and earn a living and advance myself. And in those ways, discontentment is not bad. But I'll tell you what discontentment can do. Discontentment can absolutely rob us of our ability to give thanks for what it is that we have. So you sit around the kitchen table, the dining room table at Thanksgiving, and some well-intentioned mom or grandma says, okay, I want, before we say the prayer, everybody's going to have to say something you're thankful for. You would make up some great, really philosophical thing to be thankful for. I'm thankful for dirty dishes because it means that we've got lots of food to eat. Everybody oohs and ahs because you win the most creative thankfulness. But really inside your heart, you're thankful. Thankful for what? Thankful for a car that the tires are bald and the sliding doors don't work anymore. Got 200,000 miles on it. Thankful for that, really? Thankful for a house that has a leak in the roof or siding that's chipping away or windows that are rotting or whatever it is. Thankful for that? Really? Thankful for what? Thankful for all those things that I don't have, and before we realize it, discontentment has robbed us of our ability to see what we have and be thankful for it. But it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. Discontentment can actually lead to all sorts of problems. In fact, whether you're here today as a believer, somebody that loves Jesus, or somebody that is not a follower of Jesus Christ, this same principle is true regardless. Discontentment can lead you to make terrible decisions. Discontentment can cause you to ruin all other aspects and areas of your life. It can ruin marriages and credit and all of those things. We'll talk about that in a minute. But really, maybe the thing you didn't realize is that discontentment can cause us to push away from the things that matter most. Our family, friends, and even our God. This is a principle that a guy named Paul picked up on in the first century. Paul spent the better half of his life, the second half of his life, kind of traveling around the Mediterranean rim and planting little groups of Christians called churches. Ecclesias is the Greek word, all over the Mediterranean rim. And he would keep in touch with these churches by writing them letters. In one particular church, he left a young man named Timothy. Timothy was kind of a protege of Paul's. Paul had mentored him and had helped disciple him and grow him in his faith. And he left Timothy in charge of this church. And he wrote a couple of letters to Timothy to try to help encourage him, because Timothy was a young man himself. And in those letters, we actually have a couple of them. In them, Paul picks up on this idea of discontentment and what in the world it does to us, inside of us, how it robs us of our ability to be thankful and causes us to disconnect from the things that matter most. And in this letter, the first letter that he writes to Timothy, he begins by telling him that there are some false teachers in his church that he needs to fight against. In fact, he needs to be unbending against. These false teachers are saying that godliness is a means to financial gain. Meaning they have figured out a way to make money out of following God. Out of becoming a Christian, out of leading a life. They figured out a way to turn that into a money-making endeavor. These entrepreneurs were twisting the word, giving some false teaching, and were leading some people astray. And Paul says you cannot bend against those people that say that financial gain is something that comes from being godliness. And so as he, or something from being godly, So as he begins this discussion in verse 6, we're going to pick up in chapter 6, verse 6 of 1 Timothy. This is what Paul says. He says, godliness with contentment is great gain. He says, listen, godliness doesn't mean that you get more wealth. But godliness is this idea that I'm going to become content. And when I become content, then I find great gain in life. He says contentment is really the pathway, if you want to thankfulness, to full living. That's where the secret kind of is. This idea of being content, it means being satisfied with the things that you have. Being satisfied with where you are. Now, what I've found is that we become dissatisfied when we're constantly bombarded with things that we don't have or things that are better than the things that we do have, right? So when I was a freshman in college, actually when I turned 16 years old, my parents bought me a car to drive. Like, they bought it for me. I didn't buy it. They bought it for me. And they gave it to me to drive. It was a 1984 Honda Accord. You may have heard me talk about it before. It was white exterior, blue interior, and I called it the Not-So-Mighty Honda. Now, I drove this Honda for a while, for several years, and I was not what you'd call a good driver. And so I remember topping a hill on a country road one time and going just a little too fast, and I may or may not have gotten airborne, but when I landed back on the road, just like the car just went off into the ditch, and I dented the side of it over on the passenger side. My dad looked at it, he said, the door's still open, it still drives. Good luck. You did it, you have to drive it with a dent in it. So I had the dent inside. And I remember driving home from school one day with my cousin Todd when I was a senior in high school, and the road were just wet from the rain, and so the rain and the oil, that's the way I say it, made it real slick, and I turned another corner and just hydroplaned right off the side. I mean, it was so slow. It was one of those slow things, right? Like the story that I told my dad, which was true, as far as I can remember it, is that as we were sliding off the road, I looked at Todd, my cousin, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I couldn't stop it. And we just slid around, did the other side of the car as well. Bang! Dad looked at it. He said, the door's open. You did it, you're going to have to drive it with a dent. And I can remember one day after I dropped my girlfriend off at her house way out in the country, I decided to drive home, and it was kind of dusky kind of, and I rounded the corner, and I dodged the first deer. But the second deer, I mean, I just hit, boom, just straight up. The grill, like, went away. We found every piece of the grill except the little H for Honda. I figured it was embedded in some deer somewhere in South Christian County, Kentucky. And so I didn't have a grill, kind of a dented in front end, no grill, dents on both sides. And that was the car that I went to college with. The Not-So-Mighty Honda, right? I mean, I just beaten that car to a pulp. And then I show up at Stanford University. Small, private, Baptist university that has a lot of really affluent people in it. And I drove onto campus in my 1984 Not-So-Mighty Honda Accord. And I started to realize that other people's cars were a lot nicer than mine. And mine drove, sure, the 200 miles from Birmingham to Hopkinsville and back, but man, these people had like big SUVs and nice sports cars, right? And it just looked so nice. And so I was like, I'm a little embarrassed. at this point about my car. A car I'd never been ashamed of before. A car I'd never been embarrassed for cars anywhere. Like, it's not who I am, right? And so I was like, gosh, it's time to go somewhere. Normally, I'm the one that would volunteer to drive. I don't want to drive because my car looks like one of your cars just ran over it. Right? And when you see all these other vehicles and you see all these beautiful cars, you go, oh, I'm now aware of what I don't have and how what I have is less than. Just this last week, when we were in Brentwood, we had about an hour to spend before we needed to get back on the road to get back to Union City. And Jody suggested that we go to the Green Hills Mall in Green Hills there in Nashville. And we're driving our 2008 Honda Odyssey. That sliding doors don't work anymore, and the tires need to be replaced, at least a couple of them. We got 200,000 miles on it, and it gets us where we need to go, and we're super happy about it. But we pull in there, and we're driving past all these cars that have names like BMW and Mercedes, and they look super, super nice, and they're so clean. My car's not clean, probably because I haven't washed it ever. And I'm like, where is there a hole that I can park my car in so that all of these better cars can park on top of mine, right? Like, I was just like, you become so aware. Look, when you see what you don't have and when you see what isn't as good as yours, you become discontent. And that is not the pathway to godliness, Paul would say. If you want to learn how to be godly, if you want to learn how to be able to give thanks back to God, then you've got to learn to be satisfied. You've got to learn to be content with what it is that you have. And here's what he says. And by the way, he says, for you brought nothing into this world. This is verse 7. You brought nothing into this world, and you can take nothing out of it. Now, I remember just this last month we celebrated my daughter's birthday. Abigail, she turned 11 years old. I remember right now the day that Abby showed up. You know, when she showed up in this world, she had absolutely nothing. Nothing. She didn't have any clothes. She didn't have any food to eat, and she was hungry. Right? And she didn't have a job. She had no way to kind of provide for herself. She actually came into this world with absolutely nothing. Over the course of her life, she will accumulate some stuff. She will accumulate karaoke machines, and she will accumulate guitars, and she will accumulate American Girl dolls, and she will accumulate all of that. Eventually, she'll get a job, and she'll accumulate some money and get some wealth, hopefully, over time. But at the end of the day, she came into this world with nothing, and one day when she dies, as we all will, she will take nothing with her. I had a friend that went to John A. Gupton's school funeral service over there, and I love the whole notion that they talk about when someone makes it to their table at the end of their life. They come with nothing. They can't take any of it with them. As I often say to my girls, as I've often told you, when the game of life is all over, everything that we've accumulated in this earth goes back in the box. And one thing that all of your stuff has in common with all of my stuff is that one day it will belong to someone else. Paul says, we've got to learn to be satisfied because we didn't bring anything in, and ultimately we're not going to take anything out. So here's the hard part. Verse 8, here's the hard part. So if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. So if you can eat and live indoors, you should learn to be content. That's kind of hard, isn't it? We have been so blessed, and I'm not in any way trying to say that our blessing is bad. We shouldn't feel sorry for the blessings that God has given us materially. Right? I want to remind you that your stuff is not the problem that causes Paul to want to write these verses to you. It's not the problem that would cause Jesus to talk about your stuff and your money in the Gospels. The issue is not your stuff. In fact, later on in this chapter, Paul is going to say that God is giving you all those things for you to enjoy. Problem is that when we become discontent with what we have, it changes our focus. It moves our focus away from what we have and the God that has given it to us. He says we got to learn to be content with just our food, just our clothing. We got to become content with eating and living indoors. So this last week, we gathered around tables. A lot of us did anyway. Gathered around tables and we ate a Thanksgiving meal. In fact, we would call it a Thanksgiving feast. It is literally my most favorite meal of the year. I love turkey. I love dressing. I love mashed potatoes, right? And I love slathering it all up with some gravy and mixing it all up. The little green beans with the little onion things on top, even though I didn't get any this year. And all of that stuff. I love all of that stuff. You want to know what's interesting? This year, we got to go and celebrate and have a feast and eat. And you want to know what we talked about on the way? Is that even though my mother cooks an amazing dressing, it's not Mama's dressing. It's not Jody's dressing. And we didn't get to eat Jody's dressing. My girls were upset because Jody didn't get to make carrot souffle for them this year. It's one of their favorite things. We bought the carrots and then left them at the house and forgot about them, and so then we didn't get to have carrot souffle, right? I haven't even mentioned I didn't get to have my green beans, and I think just how arrogant am I to think that I'm upset about my meal because I didn't have exactly the right thing that I wanted in that feast that I sat down to on Thursday, right? I wonder if maybe you felt that way too, right? Have you ever, as a kid, walked, or maybe just as a husband, right? Just walked into the kitchen and opened up the fridge and then hollered at someone in the house that's responsible for buying groceries, there is nothing to eat in this house. And you forget that 805 million people in the world today don't have enough food. You forget that over 200 children in our county are getting food from the backpack programs they don't have enough to eat over breaks and over weekends. You think about things like, I don't have the newest car or a car that works right or that has low miles or my house isn't exactly the way that I want it to be. There's a leak in the roof or windows that don't work the way that they're supposed to or my back porch and my outdoor entertaining area is not as nice or pristine as I would want it to be or somebody down the street has a swimming pool and so I want a swimming pool and I heard they're putting in this and so we need to put in this and we need to kind of keep up with whatever is kind of going on. And we forget that half of the world's population today lives on less than $2.50 a day. Right? We complain and we talk about things like the medical care in our country. We talk about having to go to the doctor. And you went to the doctor, you had to wait an hour. And listen to comedians, maybe you talked about it. The whole idea of going to the doctor, there's a waiting room. Like they expect you to wait. Like it's built into the way they build their offices, right? You're going to have to go, I had to wait for an hour for that doctor to see me. I know he was just probably back there doing whatever else he was, Right? Brian Regan, the comedian, tells a joke that says, unless there is like a sharp sound and scream from the back with a pool of blood kind of coming out from underneath the door, he's like, I should be able to see the doctor when my appointment is, right? We joke about that. But we forget that this year, 3 million people in the world, 3 million people in the world will die because of diseases that are preventable by vaccine. If they simply have access to medical care where they live. You only go to church and complain about church, don't you? Well, I didn't like this with the lights, or I didn't like this with the chair. I'd rather have pews than chairs, or it was too loud, or it wasn't loud enough, or Jeremy talked too long, or he didn't talk long enough, or whatever it is. And we gripe about the parking in the parking lot, or whatever it may be that we have at our churches. And listen, we forget that right now, 250 million people in our world can't even go to a worship service without fear of being arrested or killed because of their faith. See, I'm not trying to say that we should feel bad for being affluent or for being blessed. That's not what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to tell you is that becoming content is all about your perspective. It's all about realizing that you've been blessed with so much. Even if it's not what you think is ideal, even if it's not what someone else has, there's always someone out there that would love to trade their last 5 years for your last 5 years. Contentment is about recognizing who has blessed you, how they bless you. We become content and we can become thankful. That's the pathway Paul is saying to godliness. I'm a proponent of short-term missions. We've talked about this and not just this circle, but in broader Christian circles. There have been lots of conversations about short-term missions and the effectiveness of them, and what if we just sent the money over there rather than sending all the people, and there's all kinds of debates. We can get in those debates. I'll tell you one of the biggest things that I see that come out of short-term missions. It's perspective. When you show up and you see the houses that folks live in, and you don't let your cars live in houses that are that nasty. You see kids lining up to get your extra food after dinner so that they'll have enough to eat that day. You see people line up to get your old t-shirts that you're getting rid of, that you just don't even want to carry back with you on the plane because you want to make more room for souvenirs that you're going to buy in the market a little later that day. So they'll have another set of clothes. in their house. You ride up the side of a mountain in a chicken truck. That's the safest, most reliable, and easiest way to navigate those mountain roads. You all of a sudden become thankful for what it is that you have. You all of a sudden become thankful for the blessing that you've had. Because God shifts your focus away from what you don't have to how much you have actually been blessed with. See, what discontentment does is it robs us of our ability to be thankful. But that isn't even the worst part. Paul's going to conclude with these two verses, chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. This is what he says. Those that want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge themselves into ruin and destruction. Paul's right here. This is what he's saying real quick. He's going, listen, those people that all they want to do is get rich, all they want to do is the next thing, all they want to do is keep up with the Joneses, all they want to do is look at other people and what they have and try to acquire that. When that becomes all they want to do you want to know what it does? It plunges them into foolish and harmful circumstances and situations. They begin to make bad decisions, irrational decisions. Because now they'll go into debt. And now they'll put their house up so they can get the next thing. And now they'll borrow from this person so they can buy from this person so they can have the appearance and have it all together when they post their picture through the right filter on Instagram. Listen. It causes people to look in other directions than the people that they're married to. It causes people to look in other directions other than the relationships that they're in. When you become discontent, it causes you to go crazy. It causes you to make terrible decisions that, watch, we have seen ruin lives time and time and time again. This isn't anything new. 2,000 years ago, Paul says that there are many who want to get rich, fall into temptation, and trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Discontentment, he says, doesn't lead, or contentment leads to godliness. Discontentment leads to ruin and destruction. And even bigger than that, he finishes with this verse, maybe the most misquoted verse in all Scripture. For the love of money, he says, is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith, pierced themselves with many griefs. I want you to notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say that money is the root of all evils. That's how we misquote this. It says a love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. Right? A love of money is a root of evil. Meaning this. When we take our focus off of God and off of the things He has given us, and we become so discontent that we move our focus onto the things that we don't have or have to have, then all sorts of evil can get bred in our life. And the ultimate evil, he says, is wandering away from God Himself. Because ultimately, what Paul is talking about in this verse is idolatry. It's the same thing Jesus would say when he would say you can't serve both God and money. It's the same thing when Jesus says you first have to seek God's kingdom and then all these things will be added to you. It's not that God is against your stuff. It's not that He's against you accumulating. It's not what He's against. But He knows that He is in a battle for your heart, and that battle is with your stuff, with your possessions. And when your focus moves from Him and the blessings He has given you onto the things that you do not have or the things that you want, it will lead you to a path of destruction, and it will cause you to replace God with something else. Paul addressed it this way in Romans chapter 1, verse 25. He says this, they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshipped and served the created things rather than the Creator, who is forever to be praised. Amen. See, Paul understands when you start worshiping the items, the created things, rather than the God that gave them to you, then you fall into a trap of idolatry. And you wander away from Him. See, here's what discontentment does. Discontentment robs you of your thankfulness. Discontentment leads you down a pathway of destruction and ruin, and ultimately will lead you away from God. So what do we have to do? We have to figure out how to shift our focus. We have to figure out a way to stop looking at the things we don't have and start looking at the way that God has blessed us. We've got to ask God, maybe even, to change our focus. So here's a question I want to ask you, and I want to do something a little weird. Don't be put off by this. But I'm going to ask everybody to close their eyes. You don't have to bow your head. You can if you want. No one's going to raise your hand. Don't worry. I'm not going to ask you to do anything like that. You're not going to have to stand up or move away. I just want you to close your eyes. I just want you to think. I just want you for just a moment to get out of this room with a couple hundred people in it and just think to yourself. And I want you to ask yourself this question. In what area of life have I allowed myself to become discontent? What area of life am I not thankful? Is it in your career? Because you look around at other people and you see the decisions that they made in college or after high school. See the career path that they've gone on, and maybe they've been successful. You look at them and you think to yourself, man, I'm in the wrong profession. I made a bad decision. Is it with your finances? Is it because you don't make what you think you should make, or you're not able to afford the things that you feel like you should be able to afford at this stage in your life? Is it with your possessions? Is it because you don't have all the toys that the person down the street has? Is it because your house doesn't look as nice, seem as put together? Is it in a relationship? Is it because you filled your mind with so many images of what things should be? You allowed expectations that are unrealistic to run rampant through your brains to the point where you're no longer satisfied with your husband. You're no longer satisfied with your wife. Things are moving in a direction that is far, far from God. Is it with your friendships? What area have you allowed yourself to become discontent? And then what steps do you need to take to breed contentment in your life? What steps do you need to take to restore thankfulness to your vocabulary? For some of you, that means you need to go, you need to volunteer. You need to start serving people that maybe are just a little bit less fortunate than you. You need to take a step across the tracks. Go serve a hot meal to someone that needs it. Volunteer at Helping Hands or We Care. Go and hang out with the least of these. Being the hands and feet of Christ will always change your perspective back to how you've been blessed. For some of you, maybe it means that you need to sign up and go on a short-term mission trip. It may mean that you need to go and say, here's my $200 deposit. I want to go and I want to see just exactly how blessed I am. You see, the problem is never with your stuff. The problem is what your stuff makes you do. When we become discontent, we are robbed of our ability to be thankful. And we are led down a pathway that will lead to destruction and ruin at best, and away from God at worst. What area of your life have you allowed yourself to become discontent? In just a minute, I'm going to pray and we're going to dismiss our service. If you'd like to talk to somebody about maybe what is the next step for you, maybe that means giving your life to Jesus, or maybe that means trying to figure out where to volunteer or where to go, I want to invite you back to our starting point room. There will be someone there to talk with you when our service ends. Let's pray. God, so many years ago, you sent your son Jesus to die so that we wouldn't have to. And God, it's so amazing how that much of a blessing in our life goes unnoticed. I'm amazed at how easily we take for granted the gift of eternal life through your son, Jesus. And God, even if you never blessed us with anything else, that should be enough. But God, you do bless us with so much. I'm so thankful that we live in a country where I'm free to come and worship you. I'm so thankful that I live in a place that is so prosperous that we shouldn't ever have to wonder or worry about where to get our next meal, what we're going to eat for dinner. I'm thankful that you have blessed us in so many material ways aside from Jesus. God, I come to you today and I want to repent of my terrible attitude that I've had over the last month. Where my eyes and my heart have been drawn away from the things that you've blessed me with, and I've become focused on the things that I don't have. God, I've become very discontent. I think I'm not alone in this room. God, but my discontentment has led me to a point where I couldn't be thankful anymore for any blessing that you give. And so, God, in those areas of my life that you and I know where I've become discontent, God, I pray that you would replace that discontentment with thankfulness. I pray that you would replace the discontentment with satisfaction. Satisfaction in you, satisfaction in Jesus, satisfaction in all of the ways that you've blessed me and my family. For the folks that are in this room, God, right now who are struggling in a time of year where it's so confusing, in a time of year where we're going to be bombarded with all of the things that we don't have, and all of the things that we need to buy, and all the things that we're being told will make us complete and whole, God, in that type of world, in that type of time of year that we're living in, I pray that you would help us to maintain our focus. Our focus on you, and our focus on the things that you have given us. So God, I pray that you would help us to be content. And I pray you would help us to take the steps that we need to replace discontentment with thankfulness. We love you. We trust you. Praise things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Have a nice evening, y'all. See you next week.